Death of a B-17. The crew of Flight 42-5128 were all members of the 2nd Bombardment Command at Great Falls Army Air Base, training to serve aboard B-17 Superfortress to fight in the war against Nazi-occupied Europe. Their sacrifice went almost unnoticed and was almost forgotten, a casualty of national secrecy during a time of war until now. On this Memorial Day, a small group of researchers, citizens, retired veterans, and a few family members will gather at Veterans Park in Fort Benton. There, they will dedicate a small memorial to the men of Flight 42-5128, paying the honor too long denied to men who gave the fullest measure of sacrifice to their country, even though they never saw a single battle over the skies of Europe. These 10 men are all from out of state, said Hank Armstrong, a Chateau County historian who has spent the last 7 months researching the story of Flight 42-5128. One was from Los Angeles, one from New York, and 2 from Michigan. In one case, Paul Peterson, it was his day off, and they needed one more man on the plane. He ran to get on the plane, and of course was killed. It was his day off. The crash occurred shortly after midnight on September 2, 1943, during a night bombing exercise out of Great Falls Air Base. The crew was instructed to fly to a bombing target field outside of Big Sandy, but they never made it. For a still undetermined reason, the B-17 exploded in midair, then plummeted to the ground just a few miles outside of Fort Benton. There were no recorded witnesses to the crash, and Army officials remained quiet about the incident for as long as they could, and more than a month later, before any public report on the crash appeared in local newspapers. A vague acknowledgement of Flight 42-5128 was announced on October 9, 1943, in the middle of a story focusing upon a second B-17 crash that occurred in full public view on the morning of October 1, 1943, just 2 miles outside of Big Sandy. Base officials were out at the site within probably 2 hours, Armstrong said of the Fort Benton crash. They cordoned off the area and took all the big stuff. The Army's crash report was classified for decades. Its analysis of the incident was only recently uncovered by research volunteers investigating the crash of Flight 42-5128. When the accident occurred, the airplane in question was apparently flying in a northeasterly direction, 6 miles east of Fort Benton at a fairly low altitude. The crash report states, the pattern of the wreckage indicates the direction of flight, and several stopwatches indicated the time of the accident. The dispersal of the wreckage and the absence of craters or furrows indicate the plane exploded before striking the ground, that the angle of contact was nearly vertical. 10 bodies were found dispersed around the wreckage. The crash report goes on to say the co-pilot was found in the wreckage in the flight deck. All others were thrown clear. The co-pilot was burned with third-degree burns all over, but still strapped in the flight deck. There are no eyewitnesses, and there is nothing to learn from examination of the wreckage that would lead to a determination of the immediate cause of explosion. There was no apparent pilot error involved.